These are the Klaviyo dashboards of one of our clients comparing two back-to-back 5-month periods. In just 5 months, we doubled their email marketing revenue, helping them add an extra $1.2 million to their revenue in that time period. The best part of this strategy is that they didn't need to spend more on ads, pump loads of money into influencers, or any of that stuff. Through the power of email marketing, we were able to double the efficiency and revenue out of their list and completely transform their store. In this video, I'll hold nothing back. I'm going to be walking you through the exact strategies that we used so you can learn from them and scale your brand to 8 figures and beyond, just like they have. So without further ado, let's begin. So as we can see here, we're comparing 2 time periods here, 5 months in both cases, and we can see here we're at 1.265 million, and here we're at nearly $2.5 million in that time period. So roughly a doubling in terms of their email revenue. You can just see here with the benchmarks how much things have actually climbed in that time period. So to give a bit of background, this brand came to us after the CMO had worked with us on another brand beforehand. At the new brand group that he now manages, one of the first things that he decided to do was hire us because he had enjoyed working with us so much on the last brands he had worked on. As he came on board and he went through the brand's marketing and sales channels, on ads, on SEO, on email, and all of those other channels, he came to me and asked me to go through their Klaviyo account with him together on a quick call. We had a brief chat on everything. I asked a couple of questions as we talked through their advertising funnels and how those fed the email and SMS marketing channels. And I instantly knew one Achilles heel, which later came up in the audit, which we'll touch on in just a little bit. And after we left the call and got audit access, I instantly went hunting. We found some huge wins that we could take advantage of, which we're going to go through in this video. So let's start with the audit. A lot of you may not know this, but the biggest problem within your email account is likely not where you think it is, especially with bigger brands, because a slight tweak can lead to massive changes down the track. So there's a lot of room for expansion everywhere. We're going to go into all of those strategies in this video, but they had 2 main problems. The first one being their list growth, and the second was that they didn't actually know what flows they lacked. And we're also going to go into some deliverability stuff here as well, because there were some huge wins that we were able to make the campaign side nice and quickly there. So like we're saying, where you're probably not going to know where the biggest room for leverage is within your account. When you're so in the weeds on something, you can often struggle to see that. And so getting an outside pair of eyes can often be very helpful in that respect, to look at things that you don't even think to question. We wanted to get more out of their campaigns, or at least they did. And they were actually performing quite well already. And we're going to show the little tweaks we made there to get some massive improvements out of those performances as well. But the pop-up was the first thing I looked at. And this was what I kind of said when they said their flows were underperforming a little bit, but they had really good site traffic. I was like, okay, that's maybe not so much a flow content issue, but it could be an issue of how many people are actually getting the flows, considering you have good site traffic. Then once we went deeper into the account, I could see that setting up our full suite of flows to replace the only 3 flows they had, which were live, would add at least 100K a month to the brand. And these flows, as you can see, are the welcome series, the site abandoned, the browse abandoned, the potential purchaser, abandoned cart, abandoned checkout, post purchase. We got the customer win back, the sunset engaged, and the back in stock. We're actually going to run through all of these flows in terms of their actual structure using a nice little diagram that I have made out here. And we can talk through the exact strategy that we use there in terms of their brand. So let's get into the implementation side of things. We've gone through the audit, we've seen where there's leverage here within the account. So we're going to walk through this in terms of where we found this on the growth side, on the flow side, and then also within campaigns and segmentation and deliverability and all of that other fun stuff. When we came in, the pop-up was converting at 1.8%. They're a higher AOV store, as you'll kind of see later on from the campaigns revenue. So that's actually not too bad for a high AOV store. They tend to have lower conversion rates in the whole, because that pop-up conversion rate will sometimes mirror the website conversion rate a little bit. It's going to be a multiple of that website conversion rate. If you're a store where your AOV is $1,000, you are going to have a lower website conversion rate than someone who has an AOV of $75, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be as profitable, because you obviously have, bigger ticket size and so on and so forth. So we brought in a new pop-up. We added a yes/no question beforehand, and within a week, we were at a 4.5% conversion rate, up from 1.8%. So we got an instant 2.5x in how many people were actually joining their list. And as you can probably tell, when this came on to rebuilding the flows and getting 2.5 times the people through even better flows, this led to some pretty magical results. You can see here, some pop-ups that kind of do this with like their yes/no questions here. Here we're kind of like a spin to win, where we don't give the offer right away and stuff like that. And then here, kind of a bigger full page pop-up here, and you can see these are really what we like to run almost as a standard with these pop-ups. Within here, once we found the right structure that worked with their pop-up, we found the right offer. We tested a couple of offers here and wound up on a 5% off offer that we actually began running with them. We then went through, made our nice sequence pop-up here where we added a yes/no question beforehand, delayed the timing as well, and we found we had incredible results with that pop-up. We've since tested a couple of other offers. 5% has actually beaten all of them still to this day. But, from here, massive win early on was, tweaking that offer, tweaking the design, tweaking the sequence, and 2.5xing the list growth rate. So definitely look through your account and see if you have any room for growth on list and the pop-up side of things, because that can just lead to huge revenue down the track, huge leverage down the track. If you multiply the amount of people getting your flows, what do you think is going to happen to your revenue? Very, very good things indeed. Once we moved on from this point, this was the first quick win that we had gotten. This was something they hadn't even really thought to question, because when you think of email marketing, you think of flows, you think of campaigns, you don't necessarily think of sign-up forms above all. So what we did next, let's go into this here. We will go into our lovely little flow chart here that I've made out here in Figma, and we're actually going to go through and look at all of these flows from a strategy perspective. And you can see what we have laid out here. Let me zoom in for you guys a little bit more. You can see that we have here the welcome series with all of the kind of delays and all of the actual email content there. We have the site, we have browse abandoned, we have potential purchaser, we have abandoned cart, abandoned checkout, post purchase flow, and then we have our win back and sunset unengaged flows here as well. So what we wanted to do was use a lot of the really cool things that the brand had. They had, a free design request that you can make, which is a really cool feature that they sort of have on their website. It doesn't really take any extra operational drag out of them. So that was something that we wanted to put front and center. We also wanted to show off the founder's story a lot here, because the founder is kind of like the face of the brand and so on and so forth. And with some of these purchases that are a little bit higher AOV, it really helps to improve their trust. If you can actually put a face to a name and you know who's actually behind the brand. We got this with the welcome series. We have day zero. So we have day zero for just when they actually receive this. We started with just a welcome to the brand. Didn't really talk our way out of the sale, gave them that 5% off offer, and this started to crush. We then went through a founder story, testimonials of some of their B2B clients that they have as well, an offer reminder of their welcome incentive, design your own. So this is where we're going into what the brand actually has. If you had a quiz on your website, let's say, you could use this really nicely here as well. For them, they have this really cool feature on their website where you can actually request a free design, and that's very, very powerful. Then what we have on day 8, which here we're at email 7, we then went on to an incentive increase for a limited time only, and then we did a final reminder, and this really helped recoup sort of efficiency from the end of the flow, because what they were seeing previously with their welcome series was about 4 emails long, was that no one really bought after emails 1 and 2, and this is because the content wasn't exactly very exciting. This is something we've talked about in a lot of the flows guides that we have in our YouTube channel, but you want to keep the copy exciting, you want to keep the actual strategy and content varied a little bit throughout your flows, and then finally you can use urgency at the efficiency stage of the flow to try and get the last few purchases out towards the end. If you're just sending people the same 3 or 4 emails over and over again, essentially in a welcome series, this is something that we see all the time with a lot of the brands that come to us, you're not going to have the best results. So you want to be varying up that content. You want to be giving people a reason to buy at the end of the flow. And at this point, if they're not going to buy at this stage, 9 days into a welcome series, well, I don't see any harm really in just getting them into the brand, giving them a strong offer to get more people to convert, and then they'll go into a really nice post-purchase flow, as we're actually going to go through later on in this video. We then move on to the site abandoned. Pretty simple flow here, just 2 emails. This is something we've also talked about in our flows guide. This is for someone who hasn't even viewed a specific product page. They've maybe been on the home page or a collections page, but haven't viewed a product. So you can see kind of the logic there. Browse abandoned, similar enough thing, but this is just when they viewed an actual product. Here we pushed their USPs and testimonials really strong. And you can kind of see here as well, we go through the efficiency stage with the increase in terms of the incentive. We start out really low here. We go from a 5% to a 10% here. So still really, really good for their margins, rather than some people just giving 10% right away. We go from 0. Then we introduce the incentive here at 5%. And then here at the very end for efficiency, we give them a little bit of an increase just for people who've never bought before also. So if they've gone through, let's say, the welcome series, and we're giving them the exact same incentive structures in the welcome series, it's not really too harmful. But then for people who have bought in the past, they only get that tier 1 5%. So they don't really get that much to kind of push them over the line. Potential purchaser. So this is for like kind of our window shoppers. These are for people who have, let's say, viewed a product 3 times in the last 7 days. We want to give them a little bit more of a specific flow, something that's going to try and push them down the track a bit more, because a lot of people don't actually go through and abandon a cart or go on to an abandoned checkout. They look at a product 5 times over the course of a week. I know this because I am like this when I'm buying things online. I'm sure you are probably the same. Most people are like this. And so as a result, that person is higher intent than browse abandoned, but they still haven't gone on to abandon a cart or abandon a checkout, but we know that they're really interested. So this one really crushes, especially for brands like this. When you have a higher AOV, you'll often see a lot of people actually back up further up the funnel. They don't kind of move on to that next stage, as you're just going to see an overall lower conversion rate. This means an overall lower add to cart rate and an overall lower initiated checkout rate. So from here, this potential purchaser flow, especially with higher AOV stores, really, really powerful flow. Now we get on to the really fun stuff. And if you've seen our abandoned cart video masterclass, which is on our YouTube channel also, you're going to notice some of the things that we're doing here in terms of the logic on this flow chart, really, really obvious to you. So we have the abandoned cart flow here, and we have a cart value split, as you can see here, plus an order count split. So what we wanted to do here was that they have free shipping above a certain threshold, which is over $250. And so for those people, we just let them know that they have free shipping. What this does is that for the people who have free shipping, we see way higher conversion rates. In that abandoned checkout video example, we showed an example of one of our clients where the revenue per recipient was 3.5 times for the people who who were above the free shipping threshold as below on that email. So you can see what that does for your conversion rates overall. It's absolutely massive. We don't want to give an incentive right away, but giving that free shipping right there and then, that can be really, really beneficial. Another thing we like to do as well is the order count split. This is so for people who have ordered in the past, they don't actually need as much to push them over the line. So we don't want to give them that second tier incentive later on. We only want to do that for people who've never purchased before, who are essentially the same from a characteristics perspective as people who are in the welcome series. For those people, we're giving them 2 tiers in terms of incentives. We go from a 5% to a 10%. So it doesn't really matter if they get that in the abandoned checkout either, because they've seen it in the welcome series. So we can go a little bit more aggressive with those people, just try and get that first purchase. For the people who know us, like us, trust us to the point that they want to come back, they normally don't need as much to push them over the line, which helps us save on margin as well. So as we go through here on day 0, you'll see that we have a reminder email. This is pretty simple. This is just going to remind them that they have actually abandoned their cart. We're going to move through and use our objection handler email. I showed this in the abandoned cart guide that we have. And we go through reviews with the 3rd email. With the 4th email here, we go through get a free design, which is obviously a feature that they have on their website. You can see that we're really pushing this over and over because it drives so much engagement with their customers, and you see it really, really helps their conversion rates. Then email 5, we do a slight increase from that 5% to the 10%. This is only for people who've never bought before. And we do a final reminder for people from there that their discount is expiring because it's only a 48-hour time period that the discount is actually live for. These flows absolutely crush for them, and you're going to see some of the results here in just a second when we go back to the main doc. Once we get to the post-purchase stage, we have essentially crossed the Rubicon, and this is the point where we want to be trying to push them, later on to just engage more with the brand. We don't necessarily want to go for that second purchase right away because, especially with a higher AOV product, you're unlikely to exactly get someone to upsell one click on a $250 or $400 or $500 even dollar product. So we need to nurture that customer a little bit more and get them back when they're ready to come back. So we split this up primarily based on the number of buyers here, as you can see, or the number of purchases they've made. You can see here, this is for people who've bought once, this is for people who've bought twice. We got this for people who've bought 3 times. We have people who've bought 4 times and more. We always start with a genuine thank you. This is something that very few brands actually do these days. It's an extremely powerful tactic because how often do you buy from a brand and just feel like one of their many customers? You feel like a number, and of course on some level you may understand that, but it doesn't exactly feel very nice. There's no human touch to that. You don't feel like you bought from someone who, let's say, gets you or is maybe in the demographic that you're in. So starting off with a thank you, it's something that very few brands do, and you'll actually get a lot of people responding to this email, especially if it's done, in a highly text-based format or even in just a plain text email. For many of our clients, when we go for these genuine thank you style of emails, we actually get a lot of customers responding and saying, hey, very nice email, or thanks very much, looking forward to the product arriving. Things like that can often happen as well. So do not sleep on this principle of genuinely thanking people after their purchase. People are people at the end of the day, and they really do appreciate that. Moving on here, with people who've bought for the first time, we do a lot more nurturing. We let them know when their shipping times are going to be, when the product's going to arrive. We reinforce the brand mission and why we began, and this was also addressed from the founder. And then finally, we push people into joining our SMS list if they haven't already. This is currently giving us a good number of SMS subscribers each month, and when you're doing that over the course of a year, you're going to have hundreds or an extra couple of thousand SMS numbers that you can use in time periods like Black Friday or when you have new product releases, and it's an extra source of revenue. It is very easy time for you to actually grow your SMS list. A lot of people just do this on their pop-up, but you're missing out on other times within the funnel where you can push people into SMS. And then for those crunch periods in the year, you have a very reliable revenue stream where everyone's going to see your offer, whether it's Black Friday or a new product release, because everyone sees their texts. Don't sleep on that as well. Really, really powerful in the post-purchase. At the 2x level, we want to push people to become a VIP. For this brand, they kind of struggled a little bit before working with us on getting repeat buyers. You can kind of understand that when you get the nature of the products and how they're kind of higher AOV. Generally, a lot of lower AOV consumable products are generally the best categories in order to get repeat purchases, things like cosmetics, things like makeup, things like supplements. But here we were incentivizing people by letting them know that if they purchase 3 times at that level, they would then get lots of new offers in a VIP flow that we later created for the brand. Not really one of the core flows, but definitely a really good flow to implement also. So at this level, this was really effective to get people to buy for their 3rd time when a lot of people would have normally dropped off. They had very few people who had ever purchased 3 times or more from them, and this flow is a real help. So then once they'd purchased 3 times, you can see here they got added to a VIP flow, and then they got a couple of offers that they could use at kind of different cadences, a couple of months into that flow and so on and so forth. And then we would just communicate to them like they were VIPs. Finally, at the 4x buyer level, all we did was give them a genuine thank you. At this point, these people are unbelievably valuable to your brand. If someone's bought 4 times from you and you're not throwing 33% of that cost like you are in the first order towards Zuck or towards Google or whatever platform that you're working on, at this point, these people are some of the most profitable customers for your your brand. And a genuine thank you here, communicating to them a little bit differently, goes a hell of a long way. We like doing this in plain text also. It's a killer email. Finally, for good housekeeping, you can look at these flows in our flows guide as well, where we go through tons of email examples. Customer win back and sunset unengaged. You can see here just 2 emails. We got the miss us email. We have here's a gift for the customer win back here. This is normally triggered around the 150-day mark after someone's purchased. And we have the sunset unengaged, which is no longer want to hear from us. And then the last email you'll ever see, huge clickbait, so that if they actually open the email or click the email, they'll then be pulled back into the fold and they'll be pulled out of the flow. And we don't have to suppress them. We can keep them on our list and keep emailing them. So as you can imagine, going from having 3 flows with a couple of emails in each one to having a full funnel built out with the right flows in the right places, having the right touch points with the customer, having the strategy correct, having them nice and long, having the copy be good, having the design be good. You can imagine this would do massive things that our revenue. This actually did generate over 100 grand a month extra within the first 2 months for the brand, which we'll show you down below here in just a second, just from the flows. But it was actually the campaigns which were the real bread makers here. So we'll go into those right now and finish off the strategy. So one of the first things I noticed within this client's campaign strategy was that they were running a lot of sales. This is something we generally try to avoid at KMH. You don't want to be that person who can only sell once you have discounts to your list. This is kind of what we call the point of no return. This basically makes you a discount brand where if you want to sell, you literally have to give people a strong offer, which is not a point that you want to be at. It's a very bad position to be in, a very weak position to be in from a leverage point of view. So that was something that we wanted to go in and change right away within the strategy, because we weren't too far gone, but it was definitely something we needed to change. We also noticed that their deliverability was strong, but they actually weren't mailing enough people, which is kind of a rare problem, I suppose. Normally we see that go the other way, where people are mailing too many people and their open rates are really poor. But in this case, they were being far too conservative and they weren't mailing enough of their list and contacting enough people with each of their sends. So we attacked 2 factors here, which were the segmentation, like we had said, and then using email design to increase their click-through rates. Because before, they had very basic templates. We wanted to make things that had nice, attractive hero images, buttons above the fold, and also very strong body copy sections to help improve conversions. These screenshots are literally 1 month apart. You can see beforehand we have, let's say, 45% open rates on average, which is really strong, by the way. I want to say that that is already a very good outcome, but it's done by not mailing enough people, which is something that we needed to change. We're seeing here around 9,000 opens, and we're seeing about 120 clicks on average per email here, roughly, just a rough calculation. Immediately after, we're then seeing 60% open rates. We're seeing 13,000 opens. We're seeing 205 clicks, and we're seeing a lot more revenue out of the list, as you can see. Revenue is what stood out most. That's probably the part we're most proud of, but you can see here there's a huge difference across the account. We did this with a couple of re-engagement campaigns to a very tight segment of their list. Then we expanded the parameters and started mailing more people after that. So we went from roughly a 90-day engaged segment on average to a 180-day engaged segment on average, which had a couple of thousand more people in there. So that allowed us to mail a lot more people and drive a lot more revenue with even higher open rates with what we had done with the sort of prehab work on those really tight kind of 14-day engaged segments early on. What we wanted to do over time was move that segment parameter to cast a wider net. So we went from just hitting that 90-day engaged to hitting a mix of 180-day engaged, 14-day engaged, their VIPs, and then also their whole list. So you can actually manipulate things here really nicely, where you're going to get super strong open rates in that 14-day engaged. Then you can actually do a couple of sends to your entire list during that month, get more people who are not on the 180-day engaged segment to join that list via opening or clicking on the email, or just even being active on site or whatever, because they saw the email, which is then going to pull them into the engaged segment. And then what's happening is that we're not harming our deliverability, because we're getting, some sends where we're having 60% or 70% plus open rates in that 14-day engaged segment. We're getting 30s, that sort of a thing, maybe low 40s on that whole list. And then with our 180-day engaged segment, we're hitting kind of the high 40s or even 50% sort of mark on a lot of our sends. So you can see there that our deliverability is really strong, while we're kind of moving things around in order to get a bigger engaged segment over time by making use of everyone on our list. The level of makeover that we had done was something like this. So you can see here, pretty basic template here, move to something with a really strong hero image, a good kind of CTA above the fold here, very strong body copy that you can see is right on brand, and then also just some good product suggestions here. So this was kind of what we had done beforehand. The brand hadn't really put a ton of focus into their email template. Looked pretty good, definitely wasn't as basic as kind of what we're looking at here, but we were able to definitely elevate that and help the conversion rates, help the click-through rates in those emails very, very much here. So that was definitely a massive win as well in terms of the click-through rates that you're seeing here actually shooting up on the emails also. What we went on to do next was actually increase the volume once we saw the metrics we wanted. They were doing around 1 to maybe sometimes 2 campaigns per week. We actually upped this to 3 per week because we were seeing really, really good metrics on the list, and we had some huge results in the first month, which you're about to see in just a second. And the desired campaign metrics we wanted tested were 50% plus open rates, 0.6% click-through rates and above, and then less than 0.2% unsubscribe rates. So we went through some content heavy campaigns, which I'm going to talk about in a campaigns guide video, which will be coming out very, very soon. So keep your eye out for that. Like the video, subscribe and all of that for those future videos, which will be coming out very, very soon. These were the myth. So the myth about your industry, something that our industry engages in that we don't. Our design process, because they're a very design focused brand. Request a free design, like we saw on the flows many, many times. Product education, how the products work. Letter from the founder. We also saw this in the flows a number of times, if you remember. And then how to care for your products, store them, how to make sure nothing breaks, so on and so forth. As the months wore on, we were still seeing really, really impressive campaigns revenue, and we were actually cutting down the frequency of discounting across the accounts. You can see here some really, really nice open rates here up in the kind of high 50s range, really good click-through rates staying above that 0.6% range that we had really kind of carved out for ourselves. You don't see the unsubscribe rates here, but super, super low as well, which is generally a good place to be. You can see these open rates and click rates are definitely lead indicators of that. It's showing people are enjoying the email, it's showing that the content is good. This is actually with less discounting, we're able to increase the click-through rates, which is something that we're quite proud of. So you can see here as well, the revenue, super, super strong here across the board, a nice increase on where we kind of were before with previous campaigns. The next thing that I want to talk about here is testing. Within your campaigns, you want to always test something every send to gain valuable insights about your list. So we have a principle in KMH that will test something, whether it's subject line, whether it's image, whether it is even button colors, but we always start with the highest leverage tests, which when it comes to campaigns are these four things that you see here on the screen. So we have send times. And what I mean here by saying go from a big difference to a smaller difference is, let's say you have a hunch that your lists will open your emails after work rather than early in the day. Well, what you want to do in order to kind of put those other times out of the running, put things beyond reasonable doubt and achieve statistical significance, is you maybe want to test that 6 p.m. post work time against 9 a.m. in the morning. And then let's say 6 p.m. wins. Then you want to bring that time closer to 6 p.m. So you could say 6 p.m. versus 12 p.m. in the day. Let's say 6 p.m. still wins this time, but not by much. Then you might bring that 3 p.m. versus 6 p.m. And then you find, okay, this 6 p.m. is barely winning. You might bring it to 5 p.m. and then you find 5 p.m. wins. So as you're going, always make that gap between the sends a little bit smaller, so you're actually getting more accurate over time. But first test things which are far different than one another's, because you're going to be able to get statistical significance far quicker when you're testing things which are drastically different than things which are very similar, because at that point you are kind of making micro optimizations, which are important, but we first want to get the big tests sort of figured out first. Next things there would be subject lines. So formal versus informal, using a from sender, so sending from a person or just sending from the brand. So it could be Lucy from brand name for argument's sake versus just the brand name, and see how that performs. Could be using emojis or not using emojis. These are all sort of things that you'd want to test. Hero images would then be the next one. So testing out heavily designed hero images, or just going with more lifestyle photography, and then kind of heavy design overall in your emails versus more text-based. These are things you can put all throughout the account, but they're good tests to run. So testing as well also applies to flows, but within those, you have other things you want to test, such as the timing between emails. Are we going to do these 2 days apart or 1 day apart for argument's sake? Do we want to send the flows early on in the day or later on in the day? And then also the offers within the email. So you can test offers really nicely there in an automated fashion. So you can test that welcome offer and then put that into the welcome series and see which offer wins out, both in terms of conversion rate in the pop-up and the revenue per recipient on that welcome flow. You want to get both of those metrics, by the way. Don't just automatically assume that something converts better on the pop-up, it will convert better in the welcome series. We have actually seen that sometimes, that you can have something that converts better on the pop-up and worse in the welcome series. It's rare, but it has actually happened with us in previous tests that we've run. So just make sure that you know that both of those are super important. We now get to the finish. We now get to the results after less than 2 months. As you can see here, we go from January into March. We started in the middle of January, and you can see here we went from 208k from email up to 524k from email in less than 2 months there. So an extra $316,000 in a very, very short period of time, which was very much testament to the increase in velocity of people coming into the list through the sign-up forms, flows that we had made, the extra flows, the optimizations, beefing out of the flows which had already been existing, and then also in the campaigns of being able to increase revenue, increase the open rates and click-through rates, whilst actually decreasing the amount that we're able to discount. So pretty massive wins overall. And then we come on to the present day. So I'm recording this video 16 months after the images that you're seeing above, and we're continuing to work together. We love working together, and that will continue long into the future. We retain clients for over a year on average at KMH, and we always endeavor to be partners with our clients for over 10 years. That's part of our mission statement. So this is the same with any brand we work with any of the great case studies that you see us put up here. It's always the same thing. We want to work with people for decades, not just years. So right now you can see we're consistently driving over 700k a month from email marketing, currently 762k in the last 30 days. So there is a happily ever after story here as well. This is a brand that is continuing to grow with kind of a lot of the strategies that we're helping implement. And they're obviously super shrewd operators as well, which are the kind of clients we love working with. You can see here in a 5-month period, over $1.2 million extra have been generated in just a couple of months. So this is all done with the power of email, and it's a case study we're super proud of. So that right there is how you transform an account into a powerhouse in quite literally less than 2 months. There's a lot in here, so feel free to comment with any questions or drop me an email. It's all in the description below. You can also find our newsletter, our LinkedIn's, the YouTube link here as well inside the doc. So as well, if you're branding over 100 grand a month, you can book in a complimentary consultation with myself personally. We can assess your goals, talk about everything marketing wise within your brand, of course, email and SMS specifically, and see if some of our systems can help scale your brand profitably over the long term. Now, I'm sure also after watching this, you want to maybe see the specific emails that we'd like to implement for a lot of our clients within our flows particularly, because that was what really blew this brand up. If you want to see a full Klaviyo flows guide on how we're generating millions for our clients every single month just with the power of our automated flows, you can click right here. I'll see you in the next video.